Hey everyone, welcome back to the human side of learning and talent technology. My name is Bennett Jensen. Laughing next to me for some reason is Chris Bond, and Tiffany Faulkner is with us as well. We're excited to have another episode about how we support learning and talent technology, our expertise, our opinions, our thoughts, our criticisms, and whatever in between of what's going on in the industry, the trends, the topics, and all that. So with me today, we're Tiffany and Chris. We're going to talk about and get back to the topic of fix it or ditch it. We spent a couple episodes before we talked about skills last about fix it or ditch it. We want to dive deeper. We saw a lot of comments and thoughts and opinions about that topic. So we wanted to dive deeper, talking about evaluating the process, really going and how do you do that? What are the specific tactics and steps to getting to where you need to understand where you are to be able to fix it or ditch it? So it's a new year. 2020 is behind us, as I said last time. We all know that. I miss vacations. I miss going places other than spending 10 hours in my car to go somewhere, which is fine. Road trips are fun, but you can only drive so far to be able to get back home, and I can't drive to London, or they haven't finished that bridge yet. So we want to talk vacations first. Chris, what vacations did you miss out on in 2020? Did something happen to your vacation plans? And then what are you planning on doing in 2021? You planning on going anywhere? Traveling?
Well, instead of vacation this year, we actually did a bathroom remodel, which I am happy to say the contractor's last day was on Monday.
Oh.
And so now I can go back to getting on vacation. Mm-hmm. However, we were supposed to have a big family trip to Disney World this past year. Didn't happen. Had to cancel because of COVID. But we rescheduled it for March. So we're actually going to go in March and going to bear the brunt of wearing a mask all day and go have fun because kind of need to get out of the house. Time to get out and go around. But I'm sure we'll go to drive to Colorado in the summer, and who knows, maybe if the vaccine works and social distancing and the mask works and all that, we may find something fun to do in the fall time frame as well. But I'm with you. Kind of miss vacations. Mm-hmm. 13-hour drives to Creede, Colorado is pretty nice, but it's 26 hours round trip. That's a lot of driving. And crazy enough, I used to fly 150,000 miles a year. I have not been on an airplane since March 6th last year.
That's crazy.
Which is crazy. Mm-hmm. I think I was on that plane with two of y'all.
Yep. I think so. Coming back from Vegas.
Yeah, coming back from Vegas. Mm-hmm. So, which was not a vacation, but it was still fun because we got to go to the piano bar. But
even work trips to Vegas still kind of feel like vacations.
A little bit. Sometimes. Yeah. We always have fun with
that. At least for an hour or two a day.
Yeah. But vacations are definitely on the docket. Time to get out and live life and have a little bit of fun and see things and see some people.
Yeah. So we didn't have anything planned last year. It was one of those, once August gets closer, we'll figure out what we're going to do.
Yep.
This year, I think we're going to be more intentional. I personally think some salt water and sand has been calling me for a few months now.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Even though I'm a redhead and I really shouldn't spend any time on the beach because there is a side effect to that. But
yes, I understand that greatly. But lots of sunscreen, always being in the shade and or underwater is how you try to avoid the sun.
I'm definitely good underwater. I haven't been scuba diving in a while. That'd be a lot of fun. So how about you, Bennett? What are your big vacation plans?
Well, in 2020, I had a big trip with the family planned to Israel, actually, and that unfortunately got postponed, hopefully, but maybe canceled. Not sure. That the international travel, I think, is definitely still out for this year, maybe, hopefully not the whole year, but I would love to get back to that one day. Miss being able to see the world a little bit, but I've had a couple road trips to Colorado and Oklahoma and going to the lake, but would love to get on a plane and actually go somewhere cool, that I haven't been to before maybe. Mm-hmm. I think it's possibly a good opportunity to see a new city because it's probably not as busy and crazy and can actually get out and see things without being around a lot of crowds. But
Yeah.
that's the plan. We'll see what happens, but got nothing planned, unfortunately, yet. But
I think it's crazy. Back before March of last year, I think I was on a plane once or twice every single month.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I hated it. And now I'm like, man,
I miss being in
what
this
I
little
wouldn't
box.
give for a hotel room with no kids and no husband and nothing but quiet.
So, Chris, why don't you get us back to the topic of fix it or ditch it, and really get us started, set us up for how we're going to go deeper and understand kind of the evaluation process and what that means.
Yeah, great. We actually got some really good feedback from the podcast that we did around Fix It or Ditch It, and I know I've got a couple of emails from people that said, "Hey, can you go deeper?" And the question, the topic was, how do I begin to evaluate my current technology to figure out whether I should consider fixing it or ditching it? And so that's the point of what we want to get to in the podcast today is how do I go through that evaluation process? What is it that I need to consider, and driving into some of that detail? When we help companies do that, what we do is we begin to go back to our center of excellence around learning and talent management. There's 7 key elements to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say them really fast, but I'm going to say them slow to make sure we go through this. First, you got to look at the user experience, content's relationship to the learning and the talent system. And we'll talk about content in both those aspects. Administration, how easy or how difficult is it to work through that? You've got to look at the technology. You've got to look at process, data, and reporting and analytics. So to say that quick, it's UX, content, admin, technology, process, data, reporting. That's the focal point that you want to use to begin to evaluate that. And today we're going to go dive down and look at each of those elements and talk about what are some of the key components that you need to look at around each of these items in order to be able to say, hey, this is in a great place where I believe with some adjustments I can fix it, or there's really nothing I can do here. And we'll give you some of those clues. And I need to ditch it. I need to go find another piece of technology to be able to help me with where my business is going. I think we're hearing more and more in 2021 that, again, like we talked about last time, CEOs, CFOs, business leaders are all coming in and saying, hey, I have to have more information on my people. I've got to look at how I develop my people, how the people are being developed. I need to have the right skills. I mean, the idea of learning and talent now becoming core to the business is something that's becoming more of a reality, which is going to put pressure on everybody that's running that learning and talent technology. So now's the time to go evaluate this. And even if you don't think you have budget to do it, you better evaluate it, because if you don't, somebody's going to come ask the question and you're going to go, we don't want a numb answer, we want a correct answer.
Sure. I want to add a little bit about our Center of Excellence methodology and how we look at those 7 core areas. Is we look at it as a wheel, and they're not standalone objects usually. Usually there's some sort of overlap. It's almost always you get into a conversation with a client and they say, actually, I have a problem with the technology. It doesn't X, Y, and Z. Then we dig in a little further, and there's actually an underlying data issue where if we could correct that, we could get the technology to do whatever it is they need them to do. And so I like to point out to clients that they have to think of it as a wheel. And if one of those pieces are missing, the wheel has no integrity and it can't do its intended job. So I think that that's the key thing when you're looking at those 7 key areas. If you identify one area, where was the overlap, so that you can work to begin to make an impact to the current gap or issue to make the wheel stronger.
Yeah, I love that. You're right. If 6 out of the 7 elements are great and one's bad, don't go ditch the 6 that are really working for you. Let's go fix the 7th one to make sure that's the right solution.
Yeah, that center of excellence. We've been really driving that, and that's been the basis of our methodology for a really long time now. And I think we tell a lot of clients, I think it's interesting that we do all this, we're experts at all this, but we don't have to do it for you
Right.
for it to be successful, right? It's something that is just needs to be integrated into everything you're doing, and something you're thinking about with every decision you're making is, yes, I'm very focused on UX today, but how is that going to impact process and data and reporting and all those different pieces? Because if you're not thinking like that, then you get siloed into fixing the UX, and then 6 months later you realize, man, I fixed the UX. The UX is incredible, and the users love the system, but my admins are killing me right now because I didn't focus on reporting. I forgot about being able to track all these changes and what the impacts are. So I think that's really interesting. So, Chris, with that being said, maybe can you dive into one of those pieces of the wheel and give a very, detailed example of, say, for any of them, I'll just say for process or for UX, I've got this big issue. How do I go tackle that? How do I evaluate it, figure out where the underlying issue is, and then begin to be able to kind of roadmap what that fix or ditch or movement towards the end goal looks like?
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning of the wheel, which is user experience. And I think there's a lot of time and a lot of attention that's being given to user experience. And my UX is either great, my UX is average, my UX is poor, and people begin to look at that experience as a critical reason why you either have engagement and you have high utilization in the system, or you have low utilization inside the system. So part of this is going to get back to the fact that you need to study a little bit deeper. I was on a call with a group yesterday, and one of the individuals did an amazing job at mapping out all of the user experience over 2020, and when was it high, or the interaction, when were there high percentage of logins, when were there low percentage of all logins, when was UX changed or modified, how did that map to it, and what does that look like? And it was a really, really interesting study. Now, the depth that he went to, I wouldn't recommend that everybody has to go through, but what you need to understand is, what are the impact points of user experience? You've got to go out and survey and ask your people, what's working, what's not working in terms of the experience. And I think when you begin to dive in, you're going to find a couple of things initially. And the evaluation is critical at the beginning. One, too many clicks. Two, it's really difficult to find what I'm looking for. And then even when I find what I'm looking for, I'm not really sure if that is the real thing that I should be taking. Is it relevant to me? How is that defined? What does it look like? So when we think about user experience, you can't think about just that flat front page on the front end, because we saw a lot of people in 2018 and 2019 that were spending a lot of money to go, it's going to look better, I'm going to change buttons, I'm going to change terminology, fantastic, but all they did was put a new face on it. In 2020, we saw a lot fewer people that were looking at putting a new face on it, and more that we're looking at the entire user experience and the underlying process. How do we begin to shortcut items in order to be able to say, okay, I got a big button on the front page that's going to tell you this is the next step in your career path. Push the button, take you to the course, make it work. So it's not the front page, but it's the underlying elements of user experience that become critical. So that evaluation piece is first of what your users believe that they need. The second thing is really beginning to look at your technology and finding out whether you're capable of being able to do that. So a lot of the learning and talent systems that are out there today have great capability, and it's really ramped up, of being able to do a lot of the visual. But can you change the workflow? The change in the workflow is what's critical. And this is a moment to where you begin to evaluate and say, if the feedback from my users says it's really not about the front page, it's about what happens when I move beyond the front page and its workflow, then you have to go evaluate your system based on workflow. That's part of the user experience that you've got to go through to be able to understand, can I simplify, can I modify? There are some learning and talent systems that are out there that provide you some capability to be able to go modify workflow. And then there's others that don't. If you're in a position to where that system you can't modify workflow and the workflow isn't working for your users, then you need to seriously evaluate whether that's the right technology for you or not. But when you evaluate that technology, just know that your evaluation of potential replacements may come back with the same answer of the technology that you've got today. But when we talk about user experience, yeah, the front page, that is fantastic. Go make it look great. The underlying workflow is really what you need to evaluate. Can I change and modify to meet the needs of my user?
Perfect. I was going to say, when you're evaluating the capabilities of the technology, it's, does it do it now and it's just adjustments in the way the technology is set up? Or is it something it will do? And it kind of goes back to that technology roadmap. And I think a lot of times that's underutilized or even underestimated for some vendors. And you and I were talking, and it's about the consistency of their roadmap. Mm-hmm. So as you're trying to optimize something, I think we talked about in a few episodes ago that you can't do it all in one swoop. You have to have a plan to take it piece by piece. And if that's the case, if you're planning how to correct things and you look at the roadmap and the capability you need is coming, roadmap internally what you're going to be doing inside of your optimization. But part of the optimization should be, does it do it now? Does it have the capability now? Or will it have the capability soon?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that even when you begin to look at it and say, hey, the capability is going to be soon, as you begin to go evaluate vendors, which will be a different conversation, mm-hmm. different podcast, but when you evaluate vendors, you got to be always really careful about looking at that roadmap, because roadmap does not always mean this is actually what's going to show out. It's a roadmap, it's a guide, it's a path. It's not necessarily the end answer.
Oh, sure.
And so you got to be careful about that. But I think whether you're looking at your current vendor or you're looking at potential new vendors, roadmap is something you take into account, but discount it based on where you think reality is and how things begin to work. But always start with that user experience, because that is the most critical element in evaluation, to begin to understand, can we meet the needs of the users in order to drive engagement in the platform and technology? But I'll tell you, the second one for me is content, mm-hmm. and content's king. It doesn't matter what learning technology or mm-hmm. talent technology you have. If you don't have the right content, then it doesn't matter how good everything else in the system is. If you don't have content that's organized well, that's easily accessible, that fits into career path models, you're going to struggle. The days of, hey, I'm just going to go buy a huge library and load 20,000 courses in the system, is kind of a so what? Mm-hmm. I got 20,000 courses. But what are you doing with those 20,000 right. courses? How are you actually assigning them to people? What does that begin to look like? So again, on the content side, a couple of core elements that you've got to begin to look at is, you have to evaluate constantly, do I have the right content in the system? Have I organized the content in a way that's going to make it easy for my end users to be able to consume? Do I have access to be able to integrate external content sure. into my technology? And one of the reasons we see the rise of the learning experience platforms, or LXPs, is they do a great job of scanning the universe of available content and allowing you to go take that and track it to give you more data and information. Does your current system allow that expansion to be able to go look at content, not just that you created or you bought from a content vendor, but how do we look at that in a bigger picture? But if we look at everything that we might help a client with, or clients have issues or the struggles with, content is the number one thing, mm-hmm. because it really wraps into the bigger bucket of, what are you going to do? What are you going to do inside the system? It's really driven by content. And the evaluation is really important in the fix it or ditch it, because if your content's not in a great place today, just buying new technology is not going to solve that problem. Right. I know people that have moved from, one of the leading vendors on an LMS, and they said, I'm moving to an LXP because it's going to make my life so much easier. Well, they moved what was broken over to the new house, and it's still broken.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, this didn't really help. It's just a different way of doing things, and I get some more capabilities. But am I ever going to drive the value out of it that the business needs? The answer is no. You got to go organize around that.
Mm-hmm.
And Tiffany, I know you and your team, I mean, y'all are in the content cycle and the content wheel, either from an implementation or what happens after go live on a regular basis. So
yeah, we've worked with some clients where we've done some, a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of work with them to put a compliance process in place that was really super easy. They were manufacturing clients, so people weren't just sitting at desktops or at their laptop. Make it super easy for them to get the training done. And what came back out of one of our workshops later in the project was, but can you make the training fun? There are these PowerPoints that we've had for all these years. We already know what they say, but can we make it engaging? Can we make it fun? And so while they had the PowerPoint and the compliance training, and we put all the pieces around it, and it was great, it was actually down to the content that the people were reviewing where they were actually having an adoption problem with their compliance rates.
Yeah. Again, content's king.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get the content right for the technology. And boy, if I were willing to go make an investment in doing something in the fix it or ditch it world, and I looked at content and said, this is an area of concern, I sure would rather go spend more money organizing and adapting and dealing with my content
Mm-hmm.
than I would just buying a new piece of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
But one of the great things about content is if you are ahead of the game, if you will, on content, especially in-house content or third-party content, typically you're able to, any technology will support great content, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just all about the strategy of building that great content and then delivering it through whatever technology you use. And one of the cool things about the industry that I think has been really evolving over the last year, 2 years, is the vendors are starting to focus on content as well,
Mm-hmm.
the technology vendors. They have their own content services or content libraries, or they're really opening up the capabilities to integrate with a whole list of third-party content providers, even having content authoring tools inside of the system.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a focus on content, not just from a true content provider or LXP, but some of the big vendors are really seeing that and focusing on it too. So I think hopefully as the technology evolves and progresses, the concept of content and being able to support content is a little easier in the ecosystem, but it's still, you're right, content is king. If you don't have good content, if you're not acquiring good content or developing good content, what are you even really doing here?
Yeah.
But if content is king, is data queen or parliament or what is data? Because I think data is really important too. And integrations, and we talked about content integrations and LXPs, and you're adding these new features and functionalities and technologies to your greater ecosystem, your learning ecosystem. So talk to us about just data and really focusing and evaluating data and understanding, how that all plays in as well.
That's a really interesting way you asked that question, because it made me think about something in a different way. Externally facing, in terms of who you're serving as your internal client, the two most important things are user experience and reporting. And I will tell you, I will still believe, and I believe this 20 years ago when I first saw, or 24 years ago when I saw my first learning management system, that the only reason to have one of these pieces of technology is because it provides great information to make business decisions. Mm-hmm. So user experience and reporting, or analytics, dashboards, you can throw any of those pieces in. Those are the two most important externally facing items that you've got to work on. But then the next two that are the most two important internal are exactly what you said. It's content and it's data. Because if we don't have the right data, if we don't have the right data from an HRIS system, if we don't have the right data to help us assign content the right way, if we don't have the right data flowing from different systems that are connected to what we've got, which means right integrations integration in the dirty word. It's it's something that needs to happen in order to be able to flow data around the system. If you don't have the data organized the right way, you're never going to be able to use your content properly. And if you got your content misorganized, you're going to create a lot of bad data.
Yeah.
So the foundational aspects of any system is really going to be content and data. Externally, reporting and UX, but you got to get the content and the data pieces right, because if you don't, then it doesn't really matter what your admin process, your technology process, or your internal kind of operating processes are. They're going to really, really struggle.
And you mentioned reporting and data here. So I'd like to point out too, is almost always when I hear a client has a reporting problem, it's never a reporting problem. It's the way that the data comes into the report. And so we've got to go back and do some work so that we can get the right information into the report. It's almost never the inability to report. It's just you don't have the right data to report on.
Yeah. Or inaccurate data or dirty data, or boy, I know people that we see all the time that have been inside their learning talent technology. That the data is one of the things that creates most problems. I know Bennett, you and I were working with a client here a couple of years ago, and we were looking at their systems, and you kind of got down to the nut of, why isn't this thing working? Initially, we thought it's UX and reporting, but you really got into it, and it's data. It's data. We've seen a lot of HR systems that were implemented. We're just going to implement it really quick, right? We're going to implement it really quick, and we may not be accurate on data. In fact, one of the worst pieces of data coming in and out of an HR system is what? It's job role or position, right? Or how many different job codes do we have? Well, how are we going to be able to go track that? I know we worked with a bank one time where literally with 20,000 people, they had 9,000 job codes.
I've worked with some clients that have more job codes than they have employees.
More job codes than employees. This is the definition of dirty data, of data that's not going to help you operate the system. So you got to work on evaluating that. Now, some piece, I just want to get into the data element here real quick. We're talking about evaluating, fix it or ditch it. You're always going to have to fix your data if you're moving to a new system. Otherwise, it's the same piece, right? It's broken over here and old. We're going to move broken to new. It's not going to improve the process. You've got to go through and you've got to work to really make sure that you understand and you clean up the data and you simplify the data that's inside your system. However, there are some technologies that limit the amount of data that you can actually use in order to perform functions over on the content side. And so if I'm limited to 15 to 20 different data fields from HRIS or from other systems, that may not be enough information for me to be able to use content the right way. It might not also be the right number of data fields to be able to go do reporting in the way that the business needs to see it. So there are limitations in some technology that could keep you from achieving what your goals are, and that's a moment to where you begin to think about, well, maybe I got to go look at ditch it because I'm limited in terms of the capabilities of what can happen from the data side. So it also plays back into the reporting, because here's another fix it or ditch it on the reporting and analytics. Yes, every LMS, every learning and talent system, every HCM system has reporting. How easy is it to use that reporting?
It depends.
It depends.
It depends. Oh my gosh. Y'all did this like almost at the same time too.
We are consultants.
Yeah. So how easy is it to use the reporting? Are there real templates that are out there that are giving you information that's more than utilization? Yep, people use content and they complete it on this date. Do you have anything that's really providing you more information about the employee? You've got to go look at those reporting tools and evaluate them. Are they built in a way that they're quickly giving you a lot of information, or is it just kind of a blob that's sitting out there that says you can go do whatever you want to with it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some difficult things to be able to work through. There's some learning and talent technologies that are out there that are beginning to skinny down and eliminate the reporting capability and saying, just export it to Power BI or to a database and go run SQL reports. I've even heard Crystal reports coming back up as a key reporting tool on a couple of vendors, and I'm like, wow, that's returned to the 2000s sometimes. So when you're evaluating that reporting tool, you have to combine it with data in order to begin to look at this, right? It's what are the capabilities of the tool are one thing, but are the capabilities of the tool match with the data you're collecting? And sometimes those things don't happen. There are actual gaps in there, and those are other moments that you'll have from a fix it or a ditch it. Is my reporting tool is so confusing I can't do anything with it. I want to think about ditching it.
That's what I was going to mention. Any number of those things that the vendors do aren't necessarily wrong. You have to evaluate if they're right for your organization.
Yes.
So here's a reporting tool. You can do it. You can do whatever you want with it. I'm not going to keep you, limited to our reports that we've built. That may be great, assuming that you have administrators inside of your organization that understands the data access that you have inside of the LMS and how to leverage that to get what they need out of the reporting tool. It may be that, hey, you may be a small enough company that the limited reports that you get from the LMS is all you need right now. And then you may be a sophisticated enough organization that's large enough where you already use something like a Power BI. And so, hey, yep, let's pop it in there. We've already got a process and a team who handles that stuff anyway, so it makes sense for our organization.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think all these things really, as we mentioned, it's the wheel. There's nothing you can do without one piece of the wheel to be able to have full integrity and get the whole process working. So evaluating all those pieces is really the place to start. And hopefully these examples have helped provide listeners more context around what that means, where they may be stuck, and where they can get help or at least guidance on where to begin through this process. Next week, we're going to be diving even further, adding a new wrinkle to the fix it or ditch it thought process, if you will, and go into, well, we don't need to fix it or even ditch it. We need to add to it. We need to build an ecosystem. We need to add technology to support our greater technology, an LXP or content management system, or Power BI integrating a reporting tool and to be able to capture that data. So we're going to dive deeper into the learning ecosystem, what it means to build an ecosystem around your learning management system or talent management system, and everything in between. So, like I said, hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully we've been able to dive into Fix It or Ditch It even further and set that foundation for the evaluation of technology. And look forward to giving some more information next week. Hope you've enjoyed our podcast today. And if you do have a vacation plan in 2021, keep it, do it, go, even if it's just a drive or a quick flight or a flight across the country or pitching a tent in your backyard. Just take some time and enjoy 2021, and hopefully the three of us will too.
Yep.
Thanks again, and we'll catch you next week on the human side of learning and talent technology.
Thanks.
Thanks.